Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My aunt borrowed my college fund and never paid it back. After that, you will come in when the warehouse opens. And after that, that's not my lawnmower. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to steal anyone's college fund. Your mom goes to college? Napoleon Dynamite forever and always. So please smash that like button. And subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My aunt borrowed my college fund and never paid it back. I, 25 female, have always been really close to my cousin, D, who's 22 male. He had a harder time growing up because his parents had some financial difficulties. He never went to bed hungry, but they didn't have much money left for luxuries. My uncle met his wife in a dance club where she was working as a dancer. No one in the family knows this, but she left that line of work when she got married. They have a business, which Dee works for, that struggled for years, but was one of the businesses that became vital during lockdown, so things really turned around for them, and now they're making bank. This means that a few months back, my cousin could have an amazing wedding and a 2-month-long worldwide honeymoon. I was really happy and proud for him. I grew up solidly middle class. Nothing lavish, but we did have some things that some would consider luxuries. My parents, however, were not in a position to pay for college for me, which I was chill about and I got loans. I've been working for 2 years and I still live with my parents while I pay off the loans. I, unfortunately, couldn't get my master's because it wasn't financially viable. Last weekend was my birthday party and my cousin showed up without a gift. His wife made a comment, jokingly, about how they can't afford anything after spending all their money on their wedding. None of this bothered me because gifts are not an expectation, but my dad was visibly upset. I asked him about this and he opened a can of worms. It turned out that I used to have a healthy college fund until my mom secretly lent it to my aunt and uncle to help them save their business when I was 15. The agreement was that as soon as they were able, they would pay it back to my mom. They haven't returned a dime. They have, in the last 3 years, bought a second house, flown first class overseas twice, and paid for Dee's wedding and honeymoon. Their excuse is that I'm now done with college and their son works hard, so he deserves it more. My father got so annoyed at my aunt while relaying this to me that he decided to kick them out. While trying to calm him down, I said, "We both know she only thinks about herself and Dee. If she had any class, she wouldn't dress like she's still a certain type of dancer that she used to be." I was so preoccupied, I didn't realize that my entire family had quietly walked up with the candles lit, ready to sing to me, and they heard everything. My aunt left and has since sent my mom a message that we will never be seeing that money as it is now compensation for her pain and suffering. I didn't mean to out her and be so rude. I was dealing with a lot of emotions and shock over this, and I still am. My family doesn't know why we were so angry, so they just think I'm a jerk, and I don't want to tell them the whole story. But I'm not sure if it's excusable either way, so am I the jerk? Updates and answers. My cousin asked me to meet him alone this morning. It turned out that he knew nothing about it at all. His mom has been keeping it quiet. He took this week to consult with a lawyer to figure out how much they owed. He's also recently uncovered 2 other things. Firstly, the business has been evading tax, so he's very glad we didn't take legal action. He started the process to come clean and to pay that back. Secondly, she also borrowed money from my grandparents, a decent amount, which she never even paid back. They have since passed on, so the lawyer said that amount will form part of the estate and will be owed between the 3 siblings. My cousin offered to sell his house to pay in full immediately if need be, but as an alternative, he and his lawyer have created a payment plan that would pay for my master's immediately. They will take over my loan repayments immediately. Once it is paid, they will continue paying my mom back monthly until the total is settled. We will obviously be going with the plan where he doesn't lose his home. Despite my cousin and his lawyers seeming fair, they've both advised me to find my own lawyer for my mom's interests, and they've offered to pay for that also. Because of the age of the loan and lack of effort to collect on my mom's side, they could legally contest it, or some of it, but my cousin won't be doing that. My cousin apologized to me profusely and said that he wouldn't ask me to keep this secret from the family, but appreciates that I kept it to myself and hopes we can continue that as long as he upholds the agreement we make. Not the jerk. You acted from emotions, and to be honest, your aunt is a jerk. Do whatever you can to get that money back. Use the text your aunt sent to sue. People like that are horrid. You could still get a master's if you wanted to. They stole it from you. Low-key think your mom is too, since she lent the money in secret initially and is probably a big reason your dad hasn't pushed for payback. You're the jerk. I hope you never get back a dime of that money. People like you who judge others like your aunt, y'all disgust me, like for real. Do you even know how it feels to be judged like that? My parents always judged me for the line of work I went into, and as a result, I went no contact with them. Even my brothers have chimed in about how my line of work will make me undesirable to marry. Joke's on them. I can make $1,000 a night on good nights because actual real men with real money think I'm pretty desirable. Do I wish I had a husband and kids in a house with a white picket fence? I mean, sure, it would be nice. But I live my life in the fast lane because it's what I chose. I'm a YOLO girl for life. Take me as I am or miss me as I was. Do better. YOLO girl for life. It's probably one of the funniest things I've ever heard. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their aunt? Please let us know. You take my college fund, you can bet your backside I'm getting it back. You will come in when this warehouse opens. I used to work in a warehouse, and one day we got a new floor manager. He had this grand idea that he was going to make an already functional supply warehouse work even better. It's important to note that all of our deliveries were sent out on time, received on time, no workplace accidents other than the occasional stub toe or splinter from a wooden box. This place ran about as smoothly and efficiently as possible, but it wasn't good enough for the new manager. He made it a point to check on everyone, getting into things that weren't his business and things he didn't even know about. One of his biggest things was making sure that everyone was at work on time. We didn't have a time clock, we just wrote down when we got in and when we left. The new manager insisted that a punch card system would work much better for us, but the owners weren't willing to invest in that. So, new manager would spend every morning watching everyone come through the front door. We had maybe 50 people who worked there, so he made sure to count who came in and when. Anyone who walked in the door past 8:05 a.m. got written up. This is when he met the old guy. Old guy had been with the company pretty much since it opened. He knew everything and everyone there. Great guy and everyone liked him. On the second or third day of new manager watching everyone come in, he sees old guy walking in the front doors at 8:15. New manager rips into old guy, telling him that he was late, that it was unacceptable, and that he was getting written up. He's yelling in the middle of the warehouse where everyone can see and hear him. Old guy tries to explain, but he gets told to shut up. New manager tops this all off with an order. This warehouse opens at 8 a.m. sharp every day, 5 days a week, and I expect you at that door at 8 a.m. to begin your shift. You will be here when the warehouse opens. Is that understood? Old guy just kinda smiles, takes the paperwork, and apologizes, stating that he would be in tomorrow at 8 a.m. just as he was told. The smug look on the new manager's face was picture perfect. He was certain that he had just fixed the biggest flaw in the company. The next day at 8 a.m. sharp, old guy walked through the door and simply made sure that he was seen. Then he went off into the warehouse. That day was a nightmare. Orders backed up. Trucks were waiting on paperwork. New manager is almost in tears because of the chaos. The owner comes in and starts trying to make sense of the situation with new manager, and they track the paperwork issue back to the old guy. New manager is upset, but owner is concerned and asked old guy if everything is okay. Old guy just tries to hide his embarrassment, saying that new manager wrote him up the day before, and he was told that he had to come in at 8 a.m., not at 4 a.m. like he always did to get all the orders and paperwork ready for the day. The day before, when he walked in the door, he had been coming in from a break. New manager tried to backpedal, saying he didn't know, that it was old guy's fault. Owner knew better. After that, the new manager wasn't working at the warehouse anymore, or for the company. He went off to become a new manager for someplace else. Thankfully, old guy knew what was going to happen and had most of the paperwork done for the day already, so we weren't too behind when the smoke cleared. That's not my lawnmower. So I think this falls into this category, but it all started with me purchasing a lawnmower at a big box hardware store. In the interest of keeping them anonymous, let's just call them Rob Lowe, or Lowe's for short. I walked in one day looking to finally purchase a new mower, and I was in luck as they had a smoking deal on a display model. Unprepared to be going home with a new mower that day, I didn't bring my truck, so I simply asked if I could set it aside and come back in a little bit with my truck. I returned maybe 30 minutes later and picked up my mower and headed home. This should be the end of the story, but weirdly it isn't. Fast forward about 2 weeks later, and I get a call from Lowe's informing me that my mower is ready for pickup. Confused, I replied, "Pardon me?" So they reminded me that I ordered a mower about 2 weeks ago and it just arrived and it's awaiting pickup. Now I know most people would have seized the opportunity right there, but I decided to be a good person and I explained to the employee that no, I didn't order a mower. I bought a floor model and set it aside to pick up later, which I did. The employee thanks me, apologizes for the confusion, and says he'll update the order. Well, 1 week later they call again. Same thing, and I once again explain why it's not mine. They did this once a week for 3 weeks straight, and after the third time I tell the wife, I swear if they call me again, I'm going to go pick up my mower. At this point, now I'm just excited. I'm watching my phone, hoping they'll call, because in my mind, I've earned it at this point, and I want my free mower. Well, lo and behold, week 4 hits, and guess who calls? I'm now ready to accept my free mower, but I'm also unsure how this is going to play out. I don't know if it's paid for. I don't have a receipt. It seems like a long shot. So I simply tell the employee I'm so sorry I haven't been in yet to get it, but I got called out of town for work and just got back, and with that said, I have no idea where I put the receipt. The employee kindly replies, "Oh, no worries, it's paid in full, so all you need is a photo ID matching the name on the order." Perfect. I call the wife to let her know I'm going to pick up our new mower. She just laughs, still positive that once I get there, they won't have a mower to give me. But you'll be happy to know that I pull in, tell customer service I'm here for my mower, show them my ID, and next thing you know, some guy on a tow truck is loading a brand new, in-the-box, unassembled mower into the back of my truck, and off I go. Still have that mower today. I thought about returning the original afterwards, but I just got nervous it would somehow raise the alarms. Then I was going to sell it on Marketplace, but shortly after all this, I had bought a new house, and my best friend put in a lot of hours helping me move, and he too had been looking for a new mower, so I just gave it to him instead as a thanks for helping me. I still ended up with a brand new mower for essentially 60% off, and then was able to pay for movers with the original one, so it was still a win-win. I genuinely tried telling them it wasn't my mower, but they insisted that it was, and it would be rude to refuse their offer. I can't do this kind of thing. I know it's stealing, even if it's human error. You took something you know wasn't yours to have. Wow, some people are really upset about you stealing from a company with $40 billion? Who gives a hoot? Justify it however you need to in your own mind, but it's still theft and you know it. Bring on all the downvotes. Well, what do you think? Did OP do anything wrong or not? Please let us know. You should fire us. Okay, my family runs a small trucking company. Depending on where you are in the world, you might call us a P&D company, a final mile company, or a white glove company. Basically, we handle the kind of stuff that you might buy to have delivered to your home or business that's too big for someone like UPS to deliver, but not big enough for a tractor trailer to haul, and or stuff that actually needs to be brought into the home and set up, like furniture, appliances, etc. A lot of what we've hauled away over the years is stuff going to small stores that can't take delivery by large truck, construction sites where large trucks can't get in and out, neighborhoods and apartment complexes. We don't work for the people buying this stuff, we work for the people selling or shipping it. But as we tend to see the same business owners a lot, we've developed great relationships with them over the years. We don't get rich, but we've been pretty comfortable over the years. Our one major stressor has been a long-time shipper who has, or rather had, become increasingly demanding as time went on. Now when I say long time, I mean it. We made our first delivery for them over 50 years ago. Our company has been doing business with them longer than any of the current employees or management staff have been there. There was one point, not too long ago, where the retired guy who came in a few hours a day to sweep our warehouse because he was bored sitting at home literally knew more about this shipper's systems than their senior field rep, who was supposed to be supervising our operations. We have been a small but a vital part of their network for so long that almost no one there really realized how much we did for them. We've seen field reps come and go. Some have been great, some have been a little challenging, but most have, once they realized what was going on, largely left us alone to do our jobs. One even called when he took over our area to ask who we were, because his predecessor had no notes on us at all, because they'd never had to visit. We've just been, mostly, quietly plugging along, taking care of their customers, in some cases for generations. Well, the latest rep was a genuinely unpleasant person. He was arrogant, abrasive, casually insulted our employees. Honestly, it's not worth getting into the minutiae here. He wasn't someone we wanted to work with, but I'm able to put on a happy face and get along with just about anyone when needs must, so onward we strode. As I said earlier, the shipper had been getting more and more demanding as time went on. Systems had been getting harder to navigate, inventory had been getting harder to track, phone trees had grown into banyan nightmares, more and more layers of bureaucracy had been added, and with every single change, they had grown less agile, slower, more difficult to deal with. One day, the field rep called because he didn't like how we had answered an email. Not that we hadn't answered it, just that he didn't like the manner in which it had been answered. After decades of dealing with this shipper, being micromanaged to that level was not something that we were interested in. The manager here, who was dealing directly with him, tried to defuse the situation, but it kept getting worse until the field rep said, "If you aren't happy with the way things are going, maybe you should just quit." Oh, okay then. We started running the numbers, looked at all our other businesses, decided that we could, indeed, go on without them, and then I called the field rep to have a frank conversation with him. And then I wrote a short, polite, direct letter to our customer of over 50 years telling them that we were firing them. We didn't just pull the plug. We gave them a full 60 days notice so they'd have time to get something else worked out. And they didn't. We've always been here for them. They've never had to worry about it. They had someone they thought was going to be a replacement, but, well, as of today, most of their customers in this area haven't had deliveries for a week. Some longer than that. Many don't know when they'll get their next shipment. That field rep might still have a job when all is said and done, but it's not our problem anymore. Our phone keeps ringing, people looking for their freight from that shipper. Sorry, you'll have to call them. Crappy bosses mess around and find out. I had a job working warehouse and delivery for a store. The entire corporate structure was built on treating the people below you like dirt, and that was passed down through every level. Managers would just bark orders and complain at you for any reason they could think of. They paid about 25 cents over minimum wage, and the bosses drove BMWs and Mercedes. The big boss lived in an $8 million house. Our store was the freight hub for 4 others in the little chain, so we got to know the drivers from the other stores well, as they were always coming to load freight or drop stuff off. One day, we're sitting with 2 drivers from another store, and Buddy remarks that he and his partner are working over 60 hours a week. I say he must be doing okay with all that overtime pay. He says they're not getting overtime, just paid a straight time rate. I asked him if he signed an averaging agreement. He says no. He shows me his pay stub, and there it is. His partner comes back and confirms all of this, and they've been doing it for months. He had asked his manager about overtime and been told that straight pay was just the way it worked. I tell them that's illegal and urge them to take it to the labor relations. They're reluctant to rock the boat, figuring they'll be fired, so I drop it. We never got any overtime. Our warehouse was busy, our store was not. A couple months later, they're in again, and Buddy's partner tells us he and his girlfriend are moving back east, and he's giving his notice. I tell him again to file a complaint. Nothing to lose now, so he does. A few weeks go by, and when I come in one day, there are expensive boss cars parked all over the loading dock. My workmate says something big is going down. All the managers have been summoned and are inside with a bunch of people in suits. So we wander upstairs to see what's going on. The company bookkeeper had an office in our store and handled all of the payroll. He was a Chinese immigrant, a nice guy. The bosses were trying to pin this on him, saying he didn't speak English very well, which was true, and had obviously messed everything up. Turns out he was a pretty cagey guy. He knew what they had told him to do was illegal and was able to produce all the records of him telling them that and of them telling him to basically just shut up and do it. He hands it all over and quits. I see Buddy with a new partner a few weeks later. He's got a pay stub for about 15 paychecks worth of earnings. Company got caught for all the overtime pay and a pretty substantial fine on top of that. Added bonus, the second in command had driven over a nail when he parked his silver BMW on the loading dock and had a flat when he came out of the store. He opened his trunk and called me over and said, "Change that for me." I told him, "Sorry, that's not my job, and if I hurt myself, my compensation claim would be denied." As he went in to call a tow truck, I stood on the loading dock and gazed upon all of the havoc I had wrought, and my heart was glad. Am I the jerk for being incredibly mean to my neighbor? I'm 30, female. Not going to go into detail, but my nephew, Luke, who's 10, has very angry and aggressive behavior. I know what's going on with him and I'm working on it. I have custody of my nephew, and I know I said that we're working on it, but it's really hard. I love him to bits, but I think I've cried more in this past year than I ever have before. My neighbor is convinced that I have to be more strict and discipline him better. That's really not the case, but I simply tell her that I'll keep her advice in mind and try to avoid her. But yesterday was one of the harder days, and I had confiscated one of my nephew's toys until he calmed down. It was a superhero action figure. I went out on the porch for a breather while he napped, and I didn't realize it, but I had brought the toy out with me. I was sitting on the steps and the toy was next to me. My neighbor pops up out of nowhere after telling me that the kid needs more discipline for the 100th time, and she grabbed the toy. I was confused and asked if I could have it back. She told me that he and I will be better off without it. After all, actions have consequences. I told her that I don't care, and I'd like for her to give me that toy back. She patted me on the shoulder and said she knows it's hard, but it'll work out in the end, and was gonna walk away with it, but I ended up yelling at her. I said, "OMG, give it back, or else I'll call the police and tell them that you, a 60-something-year-old lady, stole from a little kid." She gasped and was like, "I'm not 60-something, I'm still in my 40s. Keep in mind, she still has the toy. I just went, "You look 60 to me." I kid you not, this woman starts crying, and after giving, or throwing, the toy back, she called me incredibly rude and ran into her house. Her partner called me later to apologize, but asked if I could apologize as well since what I said was pretty rude. I told them I'd think about it. Now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk for how I reacted. I did exaggerate her age to insult her, which was pretty mean of me, but she literally stole the toy and refused to give it back until I did. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. What kind of grown woman tries to steal a kid's toy? The jerk kind, that's who. Keep doing what you're doing. Luke might not appreciate it at the time, but as an adult, he'll probably be able to look back and be thankful for you. I'll come back, so long as Larry isn't there. Got permission to share this from my buddy who's a software engineer. Background. To give you some background on my friend Tim, made up name, he's been programming since he was like 7 years old. Tim said by the time he got to college, he breezed through most of his computer science classes because a lot of the content that they were covering he had already mastered years prior. Tim is an excellent programmer. Tim's career has been quite successful. He's worked for Google, Facebook, Amazon, and finally a hedge fund. The story starts at the hedge fund. Tim works a lot with AI technology, and at this hedge fund, he was the lead programmer manager who spearheaded an effort to optimize their AI that helped them complete literally millions of trades a day. To say his work had a massive impact was an understatement. All of this is going on with lockdown in the background. Due to lockdown, they went to a work-from-home model, where my friend Tim kept working. During the work from home, Tim was looking around his fancy $4,500 a month New York City apartment and wished for things like a yard, a heated pool, a nice 3-car garage, and not living in a high-rise. It dawned on Tim that he could leave New York City. Tim moves to Michigan. So Tim moved back to his hometown in Michigan, where he bought himself a really nice home with a heated pool, a 3-car garage, a nice yard, and guess what the yard had in it? A mother-in-love suite, which was essentially a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, second home on the property of his main home, which he turned into his man cave. It's actually pretty sick. Oh yeah, and his mortgage payment was far less than his $4.5 thousand a month rent, like half. Tim spent the rest of his lockdown work from home pounding out projects, etc. He never actually informed his employer on an official basis that he moved. He just kept working. Then lockdown ended. Lockdown is finally over. Back to the office, or? Tim's boss, Larry, calls him up and goes, "All right, Tim, on Monday we're starting work back at the office." And Tim goes, "Yeah, about that. I moved to Michigan." Larry is shocked and goes, "You didn't even ask if you could do that." And Tim basically said, "I didn't know I needed your permission to move," in a very sarcastic way. Larry insists that Tim needs to move back to New York City or he won't have a place on the team. Tim says he's been doing the exact same work from home at a high level for the past year. He's willing to travel to New York City for a few meetings a year on his own dime, but he feels like his quality of life is so much higher outside of New York City, he has no desire to go back. To which Larry said that if Tim doesn't have any desire to live in New York City, then he has no desire to keep Tim employed. Now, dear Reddit, what do you think a talented senior programmer with over a decade of experience who specializes in AI technology is going to say to a response like that? If you're thinking he quit, you'd be absolutely right he quit. Maintaining complex code can be hard. Now, anyone that's done any programming knows that sometimes the best person to maintain the code is the person who wrote the code. There's logic, there's thought processes. There's so much that goes into programming that can be so individualistic, it can be hard for someone to take over a code base they didn't write. John, the CEO, enters the picture. 6 weeks go by when John calls Tim. John is the CEO of the hedge fund. John gets Tim to agree to consider coming back, so that's when John suggests they fly Tim to New York City and he sits down with John. Tim, however, flipped the switch and said, "No, how about you fly out to Michigan and we discuss this?" Tim said he said that because he wanted to establish if he was going to come back, it was going to be him working from Michigan. And if he was going to talk to his employment, it was going to be done in Michigan. John agreed and 2 days later flew out to meet with Tim. Tim sits down and John says they really need him because he provided a lot of value to the organization and the programming team is struggling. John offers Tim the opportunity to come back with a 20% pay cut since he won't be living in New York City, and John called that a cost of living adjustment, to which Tim said, "No, I want a 15% raise above what I was earning." John sits back and responds, "The reason we pay what we pay is because we ask you to live in New York City, and we understand that's an expensive city to live in." To which Tim says, "You pay what you pay, and you pay it because I'm worth it. If I wasn't worth what you pay, you wouldn't be paying me. Now, my first condition is, if you want me back, it'll be a 15% raise." John goes, "And the second?" "The second condition is, I'll come back so long as Larry isn't there." John sighs, "You're asking for too much." To which Tim goes, "You don't need to bring me back if you don't want to. I'll be fine elsewhere." John goes, "I'll talk to the partners." Tim says, "My offer is good till Friday." John goes, "What do you mean?" Tim, "Next Monday is when I'm going to start looking for work. This offer is good until Friday." It was Tuesday. John leaves. That Thursday, the phone rings. It's John. In conclusion, "Tim, we're transferring Larry to a different fund. He won't be working with you anymore, and we're fine with giving you a 15% raise. Can we send you an offer letter for you to sign?" Tim said, "Of course. And Larry is really gone?" John, "Yes, you will never need to interact with Larry ever again." That was at the start of this year. Tim hasn't been to New York City, hasn't heard from Larry, hasn't seen Larry on any communications, etc. You want your forgery document sent to court? Sure. I work at a translation office. Our job is basically to translate official documents, work certificates, academic degrees, medical papers, etc., to be used in other countries. The whole service is controlled and monitored by the judiciary, and we are basically under their direct supervision. My boss had to be directly certified by the court. Some countries also require our translation to be double certified by the local court and/or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's pretty routine work most of the time, but since these are official documents, there are a lot of rules we have to follow, like what documents can be issued at official translation and how much we are allowed to charge, down to the smallest pennies. My boss is usually a super cool guy and does all he can to help people who come in, sometimes even refusing pay from people who can't afford it, even though he still has to pay the tax for the income since it gets registered in the system. Now, this is actually something my boss did. I fully agreed with him, but it wasn't my call to make. Last week, some guy, let's call him Mr. X, comes in and brings us a bunch of documents to translate, including work certificates, his academic diploma, and transcript of his grades, and some other stuff. He brought them in 2 batches, so by the time we received the second set of documents, his first was already translated and double certified by the court and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His grade transcripts were in the first batch. His diploma was in the second batch. This will be important later. At first, he refused to give us his diploma, saying that his mother had hidden the document to prevent him from traveling abroad. Not the strangest thing we've heard, so whatever. But we kindly inform him that we are not allowed to issue a translation of copies and have to at least see the original document. So does the court and the ministry. So he goes and gets it a couple of days later. Now, as I was the one in charge of his translations, and the moment I picked up his diploma, something felt off. It was too heavy. I actually had to check several times to make sure it wasn't 2 or 3 documents stuck together. A closer examination showed that a post stamp attached to the back was not real, but instead a copy. Strange. I call my boss, since now I'm sure this is a forgery. He comes, checks the document, but it's really strange. These documents have foreign prevention measures like holograms, UV light-sensitive prints, and most of them are in order except the stamp in the back and the fact that the photocopy looks strange. At this point, I just suggested calling the cops and letting them deal with it. But my boss, the good guy that he is, didn't want to get the guy in trouble and said he wasn't 100% sure, more like 90% sure. So he had someone bring it to the court to check, but instructed that person to be discreet, get their opinion, and get out with document, not leave it there as evidence. So they did just that. Within the hour, the document was back in our hands with a suggestion from the court official that we probably should treat it as a forgery. Hearing that, my boss decides to get the fake diploma to the guy and send him away, as long as he brings us the translation we issued for his grade transcripts, which was for the same course as the diploma, so was probably fake. He even offered to pay back the money he paid just to get the translation to us, get your things, and go be a criminal somewhere else. Pretty lenient if you ask me, but it's his business, not mine. The next day, we get a call from the local court asking us why we are refusing to send the document belonging to Mr. X to the court to be certified. Turns out, the guy had gone to court and filed a complaint against us because we refused to do his work. So now my boss is upset and does just as Mr. X wanted, sends the forged diploma to the court. They, of course, immediately can tell it's a forgery. They seized it, opened an investigation against Mr. X, and now he is on the hook for multiple crimes, some of them with serious jail time. The court also asked us to give them the serial number for all of the documents ever translated under this guy's name. Everything, including ID documents, work certificates, everything, so that they can contact all embassies and warn them about the possibility of forgery, which probably means the guy will be blacklisted in every country that matters. My boss made some excuse at first about not having all the serial numbers ready, but then Mr. X came in Monday with his father and issued some strange threats. So the next workday, all the serial numbers were at court. We also didn't have to pay his money back. And to think, had he just done his asked, he wouldn't have been on the hook for so many crimes, and he would also have received a full refund. I would still call the police personally, but I have to admit, this was more entertaining.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.